It is day 4 of my writing journey towards writing my own first fantasy novel. I've just written the first kind of draft. It's not even a draft. It's kind of a sketch of the prologue. And the prologue may have the antagonist in it, but it doesn't have the hero. So I sat down and was like, okay, so I had some ideas, a hunch about my main character. And I was constantly thinking in terms of my protagonist. And then I asked myself, while I was sitting there, like, well, what if I don't have just one protagonist, but what if I have more? What if there is a friend or a buddy, or, and that's of course something you see in a lot of successful stories, what if we have 3 people? What if there is this power trio? Like, for instance, very classic example, Harry Potter. It's not just Harry Potter. Harry Potter is obviously the main character, the protagonist. His name is on the books and on the franchise. But without Hermione and Ron, Harry is nowhere. And what makes the stories very engaging is to see this interaction between these 3 very different characters. And it prevents the story from getting a bit too predictable, where the main character, obviously, because he's the hero, he's kind of bland. But if you add more people to the story that are just as essential to the success of the hero, as the hero is himself or herself, you can play with that interaction. You can even split up the group, like what happens in Star Wars. Luke Skywalker obviously is kind of the main protagonist, but then you've got Leia, you've got Han Solo, you've got some side characters, the droids, you've got a Wookiee, etc. Later on, Lando Calrissian. The group keeps expanding, and it allows the storyteller, George Lucas, to also kind of split them apart and create tension and longing. And remember at the end of Empire Strikes Back, when Han Solo is lowered into that carbonite freezing thing, and there's this tearful separation from Leia, and that's when they both realize they love each other. And then that, of course, creates so much tension later on, like almost like an instant cliffhanger for the next story. You want to see how these 2 get back together again. So that's when it dawned upon me. I've always thought about my story as just being one person, because it feels easier to write, but is it really? And what if I create a power trio myself in this world that I've created? But then what? The second question that I had, so I was typing that on the document you see behind me, but then I was like, well, okay, so 3 people. Is it going to be 2 guys and 1 girl? Is it going to be 3 guys? Is it going to be 3 girls? Is it going to be, I say guys and girls, but, you know, male, female? That's a hard one. I'm a priest, right? And I am a priest in a church in which, like, the entire upper echelons of the church is dominated by men. And personally, I am very critical of that. I feel that there is such an imbalance in the life of the church, in the leadership of the church, when it comes to, you know, male-female. And it's kind of how things evolved over time, but it is very important, I think, that balance needs to be restored. So I'm very sensitive to that. In my own stories, I want there to be equity between the male and the female influences. But if I have a power trio, then there's never going to be this balance. Now, that can be obviously an advantage because it can create tension, but it can also, I can paint myself in a corner. Because then if I have 2 boys and 1 girl, it's like, yeah, it's a priest, obviously it's going to be male-oriented. And then the female is always, like, even in terms of numbers, it's just 1 girl, 2 guys. If I do the opposite, I'm putting myself in a problematic situation because I am a guy. And so I don't know, and maybe that's also imposter syndrome, I don't know if I can write female characters very well. That didn't feel right either. Not to mention just male protagonist or just female protagonist. I don't think any of these options work. And then all of a sudden, and maybe it's because I'm a priest and a theologian, there was a third option. I can add, so I can have, and this was part of my original idea for the story, was that there would be the main character's male, and then there would be a friend who's female. But what if the third one actually doesn't have a gender? Now, I'm thinking of something different than you may actually think right now, because my immediate thought was, okay, so I need a sentient being with free will, something interesting that fits into that kind of magical medieval world that I'm creating, where there's a lot of religious stuff going on. I need an angel. What if, there's that question again, what if the third member of the power trio is not male or female, but is an angel? And angels don't have a gender, even though we do portray them visually as a male or female or something a little bit in between. But if you look theologically, these angels are pure spirits. So they don't have a body that genders them. And every angel is unique. And there's actually a very interesting debate about the nature of angels. And so how, this is a question that was asked to Saint Thomas Aquinas, one of the Catholic Church's biggest, most influential thinkers. How is it possible that a pure spirit living beyond time and space, because if you are a spirit, you're not in the time-space continuum, how can they still manifest? How is it that there is an angel actually talking to the Virgin Mary, and that angel is clearly part of our time-space continuum? I need to practice my Doc Brown vocabulary. And Thomas Aquinas has a great way of playing with that question. He says, yeah, actually, that's a very good question. Well, what if? So if a pure spirit becomes visible, it means it does have a body. So it can either be a projection so that we think it's a body, or, well, you know what, maybe that spirit temporarily borrows a body and inhabits it. Zombies? So immediately I was thinking back of that. I read that years ago in theology, and I'm thinking, that is such a cool idea for a book. What if this third character is a bit like do you know the Murderbot series? What if it's like Murderbot, and you can actually read the mind of the angel, and the angel is actually, when he wants to be part of the story, he needs to find a body, and it can be a dead body, because then obviously it's just matter that he can then take. But then I don't want my story to be about two normal people and then a zombie, like a half decrepit corpse following them along. That's not going to make for a very enticing third character. And then I was thinking in Catholic theology, at least in Thomas Aquinas' theology, the spirit informs, gives form to the body. So why do we look the way we look? It's because we are both body and spirit, and the spirit actually informs the matter. That is why everyone kind of is different. And so what if an angel borrows a body? What if the fact that it's an angel that is now inhabiting that crude matter is transforming that body? That body turns into a beautiful being because it reflects the beauty of the angel. And then you can even have the angel inhabit several bodies, and that can be a fantastic story element where you can actually turn into different types of people, or depending on what the story needs. And I was thinking even more than that. Well, what if the angel could also inhabit bodies of living beings? What would it take? Well, obviously, an angel needs to respect free will, because God respects free will, right? So you cannot just take a body. So what if an angel is able to inhabit a body of someone who, for instance, is unconscious or sleeping, temporarily robbed of free will? And then if the person wakes up or gains consciousness again, he or she can push the angel out right away, or the angel will have to leave. That's an interesting concept as well. It can create tension and like, it's almost morning. I need to make sure that this body that I currently have does this and this before the person wakes up. And then I was thinking another thing. There's another type of pure spirit. And that is not the good, guardian, protective angels, the messengers of God, but you also have evil spirits. And I was like, wow, that could be cool. I can introduce like really creepy creatures, because if these evil spirits do the same, the body being a reflection of the spirit, they can turn into really hideous, creepy monsters and zombies the possibilities are endless. And what if these evil spirits don't go by the rules? They will not wait for someone to be unconscious or get someone's consent. No, that's actually what possession is. They just take a body, they just push the original owner of the body like in a corner, and then they just possess it. That creates so many possibilities for a riveting story. And so my brain was like, while I was thinking of all this, I was typing away. So I ended up typing for about half an hour, and now I do have some elements. Of course, this is still so vague, but I feel like I've gotten a couple of new story elements that I can use for the entire story. That this is so, and you know what I like the most? It is stuff that I know, because I'm a theologian. I know this whole like reasoning that you had in the Middle Ages about how angels work. How does that work even theologically? And I think there are a lot of things in there that I can use in this kind of magical medieval world. I'm so happy that I sat down and that I started to just write some stuff, because all of a sudden, and I have this all the time so far, the creative juices start to flow and I get ideas, and most of all, I get excited. As you can tell, I'm like bouncing up and down. It's like, this is so much fun.